Hey guys, something that I see so often as a pelvic floor physical therapist is moms struggling with constipation in those first few weeks and months postpartum. And because it is such a big problem, it's something that I have a protocol that I take women through that really does make a difference and helps get those bowel movements moving a lot easier and a lot more regularly. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you everything that I take my patients through to help with that problem, and hopefully something in there is also helpful to you if that's something that you're experiencing. I also just want to mention, make sure you stay until the end of this video, because the very last tip, we have to lay the groundwork with everything else, but that very last tip is the thing that I see make the biggest difference, and that I'm truly surprised more people aren't telling moms about, or just people who struggle with constipation in general about. I'm always surprised when I'm the first person to tell them about it. Okay, very first tip, and I know you're gonna roll your eyes and say, oh my gosh, it's the first thing that came up on Google, it's the first thing everybody's told me about. I hope I'm not the first person telling you this, but we have to be hydrated. And I know that it's something that like everybody knows. Everybody knows that if we're constipated, we need more water. If we're constipated, being hydrated can help, but it's so important that it's just not something that I can breeze past and ignore. And especially if you're postpartum and you have a newborn at home, what I find is that it is so hard for moms in that stage to get enough water in. And so I want to drive home the point about, one, how important it is that honestly, there's so many other things and tips and tricks that we can tell you to try, but if you aren't hydrated, it is very unlikely that all of the rest of it is going to make a difference. The recommended water intake, especially for somebody who is nursing, is over 100 ounces of water a day. I believe it's 106. It's a random number, but I always just try to get my moms to shoot for a little bit over 100 ounces a day, which is actually a ton of water if you're not used to getting that much water in. Like if you were already kind of not a great water drinker pre-postpartum, and now you're in this postpartum state where it's like even harder to get water in and you need more water, the top tip that I share with moms in that stage, if that's what they're experiencing, is to stop trying to stay committed to drinking out of one single vessel of water. I think that in any other stage of life other than like newly postpartum, that carrying around one water bottle with you a day everywhere you go, or having your Stanley or whatever, I think that is very helpful. I do it. I have my water bottle right here where I'm filming. While I'm filming, I am lost without this thing. I forget to drink water if I don't have it on hand. I love drinking out of a single vessel all day because I know how much water I've gotten and I don't have to guess at it. The problem with that, if you are at home with a newborn, is that you are likely leaving your water bottle or your water vessel that you love drinking out of, you're likely leaving it in a room. You're nap trapped in another room, baby's finally latched, so you're not going to get up and go get your water. It's likely just not working to drink out of one vessel. So something that I like to tell moms is that I want you to go home and I want you to think of everywhere that you end up getting kind of, so like baby's finally sleeping, I'm not gonna get up from this spot. Baby finally latched, it took us so long to get that latch, I'm not gonna get up from this spot. Whatever that looks like, where at spots all around your house. What rooms do you get stuck in? What chairs, what seats do you get stuck in? And I want you to put a water bottle or cup with a lid and a straw at all of those spots. So not a glass of water because it's gonna be sitting out, but we want something with a lid, something with a straw that's easy to drink out of, that you enjoy drinking from, at every single one of those spots. And then I want you to tell your partner or whoever's in town helping you, or it could be you first thing in the morning, but someone needs to have the task that every single morning before the day gets started, every single one of those water vessels around the house needs to get filled with new fresh water. That way, no matter where you get stuck, you have water that you can say, I'm not really thirsty right now, but I'm stuck here anyway, so I might as well chug some water. That's my top tip if you are at home with a newborn for getting enough water in. If it's something that you're struggling with, is to just give up on the idea of trying to drink out of only your Stanley, and your Stanley's never close by, so then you never get enough water in. So I hope that tip helps. That one helps lots and lots of my moms, so I hope that one's helpful for you. Okay, the next few tips that I have for you are all toileting tips. So all things that we can do when it's time to sit on the toilet to have a bowel movement, because if you're constipated, we're likely struggling with one of two things. One, that we're just having stools that are really hard to pass, and so it feels like we can't get them to pass, or they're hurting, or maybe we're passing a little bit, but we're not getting a full clearance, a full bowel movement out when we sit on the toilet. Or you might find that you're so used to just getting that regular urge to have a bowel movement and you're really not getting them right now, so you're just forgetting altogether. So if that second one sounds like you, then this first tip is for you. I kind of did that out of order, that's okay. The first tip that I want to give you is that if you feel like you're just skipping days altogether without having a bowel movement, I want you to think of what's the regular time that your body normally tells you that it's time to have a bowel movement. For most people, that's in the morning. If that's not you, then do what it normally is for you. But even I want you to set an alarm on your phone, and even if you don't have an urge at that time, I want you to still go sit on the toilet for at least 5 minutes. Our bowels love routine. Love it. And so if we can at least get back into the routine of going to sit on the toilet around the time that you are used to getting those urges, maybe we can get that routine back on track so that you can start to get those urges at more regular intervals. Hopefully daily. We should be having at least one daily bowel movement that feels like we're fully emptying. And if we can get that back on track, then that can be really helpful. So set a timer, try to make time to just go sit and relax and deep breathe on the toilet for 5 minutes. It might feel silly. It might feel like nothing's happening at first. That's okay. I want you to keep doing it because it might take a few days, maybe even up to a week of doing that before we start to see something happening. The next toileting tip that I want to talk to you about is a squatty potty. It doesn't even have to be a squatty potty, but anything that gets your knees above your hips. When we are sitting on the toilet and when we are trying to have an easier to pass bowel movement and we think anatomy and we think pelvic floor, what we need those pelvic floor muscles to do and those sphincter muscles to do around the back of your pelvic floor is to fully relax and let go or lengthen and get out of the way. Anything that when you're sitting on the toilet helps you to get your knees above your hips, puts your hips and puts your pelvic floor in a position that it can much more easily and automatically do that. So I highly, highly recommend a squatty potty or something similar to anyone that's struggling with constipation. If you don't want to go out and buy a squatty potty, I will say the biggest benefit to having a squatty potty is that it tucks around the toilet, it gets out of the way, which is super convenient. They make much nicer looking ones now, and they make travel ones. So if you're someone that travels often or tends to get travel constipation, I also highly recommend the travel squatty potty. It folds super flat to go into a suitcase really easily. But if you're not wanting to buy a squatty potty, other recommendations are turning the trash can in your bathroom on its side and putting your feet on top of that. Even just taking 2 toilet paper rolls and putting your feet on top of that if it's enough, or just a stool, like any step stool that you have around your house that you want to keep next to the toilet and just pull in front of you when you're trying to have that bowel movement. Anything that gets those knees above the hips, that's all we're going for. It doesn't have to be from a squatty potty. The next 2 toileting tips that I have for you kind of go hand in hand, and that is taking time. So actually giving yourself enough time to sit on the toilet and also using some relaxation and some breathing techniques. So the time thing, what I'm really referring to is especially for moms, it can be really challenging or feel like you have to rush in and rush out of the bathroom if you're there alone with the baby, if you have older kids at home who need you and they're not going to like come just sit quietly in the bathroom with you while you try to go. Trying to find a way that you are able to go give yourself enough time to sit on the toilet as long as you need to let those muscles go. A big part of postpartum constipation is that because of labor and delivery, those pelvic floor muscles are still a little bit in guard mode. So they're kind of gripped and tight and shortened because they're a little like, whoa, what the heck just happened? Let's never let that happen again. And let's stay nice and short and tight and guarded. And that guard mode is going to prevent you from being able to have an easy movement. And it may even prevent you from being able to feel the urge that you need to have a bowel movement. So if that's the case, and if that's one of the big drivers of your postpartum constipation, then we need you to be able to go sit on the toilet and do some really deep diaphragmatic breaths. Take some deep diaphragmatic inhales that you feel reaching down to that pelvic floor and really lengthening that pelvic floor. When we take great, true diaphragmatic inhales, that breath should also reach those pelvic floor muscles, and it's part of what signals them to lengthen. It's not going to listen right away when you say, okay, relax and let go. That's the whole point. They're in that guard mode because they want to protect you and they're not really sure right now that you're safe and that they should let go. So if you have the time to sit on the toilet, breathe, relax, notice where you're holding tension in other areas. Are we gritting our teeth? Are we kind of clenching our fists or holding lots of tension in your hands? Are you sitting with your shoulders shrugged? Anywhere that you're holding other tension is going to lead to tension down in that pelvic floor, and that's going to prevent you from being able to have an easy to pass, full, feels like we fully eliminated bowel movement. So taking time, but also within that time, working on relaxing and letting go of tension and using our breath to do so. Don't forget that if we are dehydrated, none of those toileting tips are going to be all that effective. We have to start with hydration. But then that leads me into the third tip, which I see make a huge difference for moms. And this is what I was alluding to. I'm so surprised when women come to see me and they're like, yeah, I told my doctor I was constipated, or I told my postpartum doula, or whoever it is that they're talking to postpartum, and that nobody's mentioned this to them before. And that is magnesium citrate. So a lot of women might already be taking some form of a magnesium supplement, which is great because magnesium is one of those nutrients that our bodies, all of our bodies, but especially pregnancy postpartum, is so depleted in. And so you might still be taking your prenatal vitamin, or you might be taking some sort of a postnatal supplement or a group of supplements, and likely magnesium is included in those. But the type of magnesium that we need when we're talking constipation is magnesium citrate. Here's what I tell most of my patients. At the end of the day, magnesium citrate is like the cheapest, most worthless form of magnesium. And so if you're taking any sort of a high quality multivitamin or prenatal or anything like that, it likely isn't including magnesium citrate. It's likely including another form of magnesium, because the other forms of magnesium are much more robust and much more what our body needs. However, magnesium citrate is so good for pulling water into your colon, so that because we're already so hydrated, because we worked on it so much, so that when you pull that water into your colon, we make that stool much, much easier to pass. So if you have that feeling that I can't get off my stool softeners, or I get constipated right away, or I know that the reason I'm constipated is because every time I do actually have a bowel movement, it's really hard to pass, then magnesium citrate is the thing that can help so much to make those bowel movements easier to pass, while also being able to get off of those stool softeners that can cause so many GI issues and stomach upset, and come with lots of other things that people are like, I wish I could get off of these, but then I'm constipated. Magnesium citrate is the answer. My top form of magnesium citrate that I recommend is a powder that you mix into your own water or into your own drink. They come in capsules, they come in gummies. You can get magnesium citrate in so many other forms, but with magnesium citrate, we really want to be able to titrate the dose really well. What that means is be able to play with the dose really well. And so if you have powder, then you have a lot more control at being able to raise the dose to find your base dose without overshooting and overdoing it. I like to have women start at 1/4 of a teaspoon at a time. The dose on your magnesium powder might say 1 to 2 teaspoons, but if we start at 1/4 of a teaspoon and then every single night we go up by 1/4 of a teaspoon at a time, you'll likely hit a point where you're like, whoa, the next morning I had a really easy to pass bowel movement. That's great. That might be our base dose. Let's stay at that dose for a little bit and make sure it stays easy to pass and daily. And if not, we can in the next few nights go up another 1/4 of a teaspoon, see if that's closer to our base dose. But really, we're just going for what is that dose of your magnesium powder that keeps you at a daily easy to pass bowel movement right now, and that helps you be able to wean yourself off of any of the other stool softeners or teas or any of the other more aggressive things that's like, well, I had a bowel movement, but my stomach's upset now. Worst case scenario, if we overshoot that dose as you're going up by only 1/4 of a teaspoon every time, then we're going to have a loose bowel movement, which is, as we all know, if you're someone that's constipated, definitely not the end of the world. So worst case scenario is if we overshoot it, we're only overshooting it by 1/4 of a teaspoon, and then we just have a day where we have a loose bowel movement, and that's okay, versus with a capsule, we have to go up a little bit more at a time every time you're increasing your dose. If you're interested in the magnesium powder that I have patients order and that work for most of my patients, I personally take it as well. I'm gonna have a link below to my FullScript account that has it's the list of my constipation favorites or my constipation support favorites. And so you'll see that it also has some Senna, the Smooth Move tea, and some of the other Senna supplements in there, which can also be really helpful. But that magnesium citrate is is from a good reputable brand, so we know that there's no like weird fillers or things in it that we don't want, but it's still like a really good robust amount of magnesium citrate. That powder is linked in my FullScript, and if you don't know how FullScript works, when you log into FullScript, if you've never been on it and you make an account under a practitioner, under me, then you'll get that discount that practitioner chooses to pass on to you through FullScript. So you can also add any of your other regular supplements that you're already ordering. Then my FullScript account gets you anywhere from a 15 to a 20% discount on all of your orders. So that's the other big benefit to checking out that FullScript link below. If there are any other regular supplements, regular high quality supplements, they can be expensive. It's expensive to stay on your high quality supplements. And so that's my gift to you through that FullScript account, is that practitioner discount if you want to check it out. I hope this video was, you're struggling with constipation in those early postpartum weeks and months. It can really be a killer for people, and it can really, really impact how much you're enjoying those first few weeks and months home with baby. I've seen it from lots and lots of my patients in the clinic, and so I understand how uncomfortable and how impactful to your day it can be. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any comment or if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I will see you next week.